This is the Faraday Porteur S. It's the first new model that the company's introduced since mid-2012 when they launched this on Kickstarter. I've always really liked this bike because it's really well balanced, it's lightweight, it's beautiful, extremely quiet, but of course it costs a little bit more to do that. The standard Faraday Porteur has kind of a belt drive, like a Gates carbon belt drive, and it has an 8-speed internally geared hub. And that one goes for about $3,500. Well, they've introduced this new S model to be a little bit more affordable. It's $2,799, and that's not including any accessories. So first of all, it comes in a couple of colors. We've got this new slate gray that looks really nice, very handsome, but they've also got the white, which has orange accents, and I really like that one. It looks great too. They're all sort of this high step frame design, but they do have 3 sizes, okay? So they kind of have your small frame, which they say fits between people who are, 5'2" to 5'6". I'm about 5'9", so I'm having a medium here. That's what we're testing. That says between 5'6" and 5'11", and then they have large, 5'11" to 6'3". Now, I weighed this frame, and it was about 42.5 pounds, so that's pretty light for an electric bike. And again, the battery is integrated right into that down tube right there, and the motor is in the front, and we've got an internally geared hub in the rear. So you can see that the real heavy stuff, it's all pretty low, and it's really well spread across the frame. So back to the accessories real quick. You can upgrade this saddle to a Brooks B17, kind of a leather saddle. I actually really like the saddle that they've got on it. It's fairly active, that longer nose, but there's substantial padding back there at the rear. It just feels nice. It actually feels a lot better than it looks at first glance, because it kind of seems like, oh, that seat's really high, and what kind of handlebars are these? But they're swept back. This is sort of like a riser Porter style handlebar. It just comes right back to your hands, and it feels really nice. So I'll hit that a little bit later. You can also add racks, and so they've got kind of a rear rack, sort of traditional, connects right there to the seat stay, and then down here near the dropouts. And then there's a front, really heavy-duty Porter style rack. There's an adapter right here below the down tube, and then you can see there's a threaded eyelet there. And that rack, it connects right to sort of the head tube, and it doesn't turn. So when you turn the bicycle like this, the rack stays really stable and solid, and it's a really capable rack. And that one's $225. The rear one's $125. You can see it kind of starts to add up, but if you're someone who's never going to use the rack and you're just going to cruise around town and maybe use this to commute with like a backpack or a messenger bag, you could skip out on those, and that'd be fine. You could save some money. They also have a nice little bell for $40, a leather pouch that's actually really cool. It kind of connects right here between these 2 top tubes. That's another $70, and an extra charger for $50. So let me just get right into the bicycle components of this. It's all chromoly steel, the whole frame and the fork. This is a rigid fork. There's no suspension. That makes it a little bit lighter, but I found that fork, that steel, it's solid, it's strong, but it also kind of dampens vibrations really nicely. And I guess I've ridden sort of these classic vintage bikes before that are steel, and I did notice that sort of on my own. So it's neat to see that feeling preserved on an electric bike. I think the longer handlebars also sort of dampen that feeling of vibration if you're riding on concrete or going over cracks, and that's great when you're going the distance. We've got synthetic cork grips here. They work pretty well, and kind of blend in. I think the final version is going to be a little bit darker to match the saddle. This is due out in like August 2015, so I'm getting a little bit of a sneak peek here, but this is the final production build, which is really cool. If we come back down here, you can see that we've got sort of a standard looking chain, but they have a really nice aluminum bash guard that it sort of acts almost as a chain guard, and it might protect your teeth a little bit if you encounter the edge of a curb or something. The chain is really tight because, again, this is an internally geared hub system back here. This is a Sturmey Archer 5-speed. So you remember I said the higher end sort of traditional Porter has like an 8-speed. So you lose some gears, and again, the chain is going to be a little bit noisier and greasier than a belt, and perhaps even heavier, but it still does a really good job. This isn't going to be banging into your chain stay or anything, which is nice. It might be a little bit easier to repair. The frame, it looks like it can still be disconnected. They're kind of using the same frame here, but that's one of the big expenses on a lot of belt-driven bicycles. The fenders are also steel, and they feel really solid, really firm. Great sort of support arms here and here. Gotta love that. The wheel size is 26 by 1.5. These are Pan-Eraser, kind of a hybrid size, really. A lot of times on a bike like this, I'll see like 700C, which is more like 28-inch. By using a 26-inch, it's a little bit smaller. It kind of brings the bike down to the ground a little bit more. And then that 1.5-inch diameter is really nice. It adds a little bit of, vibration dampening, and we've got these nice hybrid tread that's going to be smooth and really efficient that way. So, gotta love that. While I'm up here, I should point out the light. I love this. It's just super well built in, right into the stem, LED powered, very bright. You can kind of adjust that angle, but once it's set, you've got something that's super durable. And immediately when you turn the bike on, both the front and rear light activate. I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Just press the button, this turns blue, and then you can see the red LEDs. So that's just always on, and I kind of like that because, LED lights, they don't take too much energy, and you might as well, if you're cruising around the city dusk or dawn, that could be getting you noticed, and just avoiding any kind of run-ins with other pedestrians or cars. The brake levers here, they're just kind of these, they're elegant but just real basic Shimano. There is no motor inhibitor on these brakes, and that's because this actually uses a torque sensor built right here into the bottom bracket. And so with torque sensor versus a cadence sensor, it senses how hard you're pushing and when you're actually pushing. So it requires a little bit more of an active ride, but I found that it's fairly sensitive, and when I stop pedaling, it cuts out. And when I pedal harder, it really feels like the bike's responding. So I love that. And again, it sort of removes the complexity up here. It's just an extremely clean cockpit. We've got the brake wire here, and they are mechanical. And then we've got cables coming off of the shifter and the controller over here. But while I'm down here, this is a 160 millimeter rotor in the front and the rear. Got these nice Avid, as I said, mechanical disc brakes. They've even got a little kind of a finger adjust here. So if you feel like, I'm pulling all the way down on the lever, maybe you're wearing down on the brake rotor, well, you can kind of tighten them up by hand without having to go in there with a tool. So I kind of like that, it's just a little extra. The wheels themselves are not quick release, so you'd need kind of a standard wrench set to get those off, again, front and rear. And that means, a little bit more time, maybe a little bit more weight if you had a rack and you carried a little saddle pouch with your tools and some extra tubes or something. You could always slime these tires. But again, being a city bike and being so light at that like 40-pound mark, this is a lot easier to carry onto a bus or put on top of your car or hang off a car rack, because it's just not so overwhelming, right? Like a lot of electric bikes that have big batteries, and that's not the case here. So I really love that. And then down here we've got the nice kickstand that's doing such a great job here. Mass load, it's kind of a double-legged scissoring kickstand, and they both kind of swing up and stay out of the way. So that's cool. These nice aluminum alloy platform, kind of vintage-looking pedals again. I think that's most of the like bicycle parts of this bike. One of the cool things about internally geared hubs is that you can a lot of times kind of switch gears even if the bike isn't moving. I kind of like that, because sometimes you'll pull up to a stop sign and realize that you want to switch down to a lower gear. It might take a second for that to kick in when you start pedaling, but it's just cool to be able to prepare yourself. And by the way, you don't have to upgrade to Faraday's custom rack. You could always add your own. They've got the bosses to do that. One thing they don't have though is bottle cage bosses, and that's too bad. It seems like maybe there was an opportunity down here. I'm not sure what that does to frame strength. I know that this down tube right here, this is actually where the batteries are stored, right in here. And the pack goes from somewhere around here down to the bottom. And this actually can be opened. If you look through here, there's kind of that gray plastic piece. You can see it up there. That can be removed after you take the kickstand off, and the battery slides right out. But this is what people seem to always ask, like, where are the batteries? Can you point on the frame?
People totally ask. So the batteries is right here, basically, right?
Oh, look at that.
It's in the down tube. So people ask all the time, can I take the battery out? And the answer is absolutely. So it does, it's not meant for like, you come home at the end of the day, take it out every day, but it totally comes out.
Like for replacement.
End of life replacement, yep. Exactly.
So the warranty on this bike is pretty impressive. It's 2 years comprehensive. That includes the motor, that includes the battery pack, the frame, everything. Like, just really cool. And I have a feeling that this internally geared hub is going to hold up and not require as much maintenance as a standard cassette with a derailleur, because it's just, you know, there's really nothing hanging down. It's a lot easier for that to stay safe if the bike tips over or something. It's beautiful that way, and it just seems to stay cleaner. So I think that's pretty good. Maybe it's time to hit the electric specs, right? So we've got 18650 lithium-ion batteries in there by Panasonic, and Panasonic is one of the highest like quality brands out there. Of course, there's Samsung. Everyone recognizes that. Panasonic in the industry is recognized as like one of the higher end ones. They just go a lot longer. But if you really want to make them last, the key is try to keep them between 20% and 80% charged if you're storing them, right? So you're not stressing the pack on either end of those extremes. And then try to keep them, you know, in a cool, dry location. Extreme cold is bad, extreme heat is bad. And as I was mentioning before, you know, at some point, if and when they wear out, eventually after thousands of charge cycles, you know, it is replaceable. They can work with you, and it actually doesn't seem too complicated. That's something your local bike shop could probably help you out with. The motor up here is an 8-fun. It's 250 watt nominal, but this is kind of their upgraded hub. It's the SYX. Okay, so, you know, it looks a little bit nicer. There's kind of this curved canister that it's in. It's got the black stripe down the middle. It looks nicer because it is nicer. This is just their higher end offering, and this peaks out at about 350 watts. So even though it may sound sort of modest, in my experience, because it's a pedal assist only electric bike, it's very smooth and it's satisfying. Like, it's a good feeling motor. It definitely gets the job done, especially because it's a lighter weight bike. And, you know, I'm kind of a lighter weight person. I like to pedal along. I want to get out there, and this bike just blends in so nicely. It's super quiet, and it's definitely on the other extreme. It's not a scooter where you just like twist it and go. It doesn't have a throttle that way. It's got 2 levels of pedal assist. Okay, so before I get to those, again, this is a internally geared hub motor. It does produce a little bit more of a whirring, but because it's a smaller size and kind of a premium version from 8-fun, it does seem like it's a little bit quieter. It also doesn't add too much weight to the front, which is nice. The steering is still really nimble and loose. Sometimes if you add too much weight, it's like you can really feel it, and it kind of creates some inertia as you steer. So that's great. Okay, so to activate the bike, as we did earlier, you come back here to the control system. You press that one button. That's the charging port, by the way. You press that button, and you've got this like nice little e-ink display in here, and so that's supposed to be your battery level, and it sort of goes down as you drain it. O is like off, and then the little dot is standard, and then the big dot is kind of your boost. So it's just these 2 levels, and you can imagine, you know, you're riding along, you don't even have to look down. It's real easy to just switch between those 2, very intuitive. And then over here, it's the same thing. You just kind of, you know, twist down to get lower, easier gears, and twist up to go faster and get those harder gears. That's awesome, because again, you might be in kind of a distracting situation and don't want to have to mess with that kind of thing while you're on the go. I guess that's it, you know? You pick one of those 2 like levels, you start pedaling, and the bike just goes. So I'm gonna go ahead and hop on this thing and you know, ride around a little bit and give you some idea of what it sounds like and what it looks like. Found a nice little hill over here. I'm actually right outside San Francisco, which is where Faraday is headquartered at. Got a nice little team here, and they've been, you know, fulfilling their orders from Kickstarter all those years ago and taking the company to the next level. It's beautiful to get to see that kind of response. Okay, so here's the path that way. I'm gonna start out in the lowest level of assist. I really can't hear it. It's a little bit breezy here, but the motor's just super quiet. Let's try this again. This time I'm gonna put it on the highest level of assist. I was just doing the gear shifting test, and I took it down to no power, and it's amazing. I mean, just because it's so light and you've got a decent range, even just pedaling this around like a normal bicycle feels really good. It doesn't feel exhausting like some of the larger electric bikes I've tried, so that's kind of cool. It is a 20-mile-per-hour top speed, but you can't really tell because there's no display panel up here giving you your range. Now I'm climbing the hill, just real easy, nice and relaxed. Definitely not having a problem. We're getting some elevation here, going into the eucalyptus forest. Really pretty. Yeah, no problem, and still relatively quiet. Woo. It's great. Wow, well, that's the Faraday Porteur S. It's their new, more affordable option, again in gray or white. $27.99. It's coming out in August 2015. For the full write-up on this with all the detailed specs and everything, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Maybe you end up with this bike and you realize something I missed, do a video response, or maybe I'll chat you up in the forums and try to answer some more of those questions.